Operation Market Garden was the boldest, most audacious airborne assault of World War II, a gamble so immense that it could have ended the war, or extended it by years. Conceived in the minds of Allied planners in the autumn of 1944, it was a plan of extraordinary ambition: to leapfrog the heavily defended Siegfried Line in Germany, capture a series of critical bridges, and force open the road to the heart of the Third Reich. It was a gamble not of manpower alone, but of timing, intelligence, logistics, and sheer nerve. Yet, for all its ambition, it became one of the most controversial operations of the war, simultaneously a testament to Allied bravery and a lesson in overreach. The story begins with the liberation of France and Belgium. By September 1944, the Allies had pushed German forces back across much of Western Europe. Paris had been liberated, and the rapid advance seemed unstoppable. British and American forces were pushing toward the Rhine, while Soviet forces were pressing from the east. Victory appeared imminent. Yet within the Allied command, a desire for a decisive, spectacular stroke began to emerge, a strategy that would bring the war to Germany's doorstep and perhaps even end it before winter. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, commander of the British 21st Army Group, became the architect of this plan. Known for his meticulous planning and cautious nature, Montgomery conceived an operation that relied on speed and surprise rather than brute force. The strategy was simple in concept, but fiendishly difficult in execution. Use airborne troops to seize a series of bridges over the major rivers of the Netherlands, and then drive armored divisions along the narrow road connecting them, punching a path directly into northern Germany. This would bypass the heavily fortified Siegfried Line, forcing the German army to retreat in disarray and giving the Allies a shortcut to victory. The operation was divided into two components: Market and Garden. Market was the airborne portion, executed by British, American, and Polish paratroopers. Garden was the ground assault, conducted by the British XXX Corps, tasked with advancing along the single highway known as Hell's Highway to link up with the airborne forces. The plan required perfect coordination, flawless timing, and the assumption that the German resistance would be weaker than it turned out to be. The scale of the operation was immense. Nearly 35,000 paratroopers were to be dropped behind enemy lines in a series of landing zones across the Netherlands, targeting bridges in Eindhoven, Nijmegen, and ultimately Arnhem. Each bridge was a strategic jewel. Control of these crossings meant the Allies could bypass the German defensive line and open a corridor to the Rhine. Yet, from the very beginning, there were warning signs that this gamble would be dangerous. Intelligence reports suggested the presence of German panzer divisions in the area, but these reports were underestimated. The Allies believed that the German forces were scattered and depleted, a critical miscalculation that would later prove catastrophic. On September 17, 1944, the airborne assault commenced. Thousands of paratroopers descended into Dutch skies, landing in the countryside, forests, and small towns. The initial moments were chaotic, as paratroopers were scattered across the countryside, often landing miles from their designated drop zones. Despite this, courage and training enabled many units to quickly regroup and begin advancing toward their objectives. In Eindhoven, British and Polish airborne units succeeded in capturing key bridges, and the city was secured within a matter of hours. The first stage of Market was going according to plan, giving the Allies a glimmer of hope. However, the problems began to mount as units pushed toward Nijmegen. The Nijmegen Bridge, critical for XXX Corps' advance, became the site of intense German resistance. Airborne units faced fierce opposition, and the crossing of the Wall River required a daring, improvisational assault under heavy fire. Boats ferried soldiers across, often exposed to machine guns and artillery. Casualties mounted, and delays began to accumulate. Each hour lost in securing the bridges meant XXX Corps was further behind schedule, creating gaps in the operational timetable that would have severe consequences. The final objective was Arnhem, just 30 miles from the German border. The British 1st Airborne Division, elite troops with extensive training, were tasked with capturing the Arnhem Bridge and holding it for just 2 days, enough time for XXX Corps to arrive. It was a mission of audacious precision. Hold the bridge against a numerically superior enemy and wait for reinforcements. Yet, unknown to the Allies, the 9th and 10th SS Panzer Divisions were refitting nearby, a discovery that would prove disastrous. Intelligence failures and an underestimation of German strength turned Arnhem into a trap rather than a target. As the paratroopers landed near Arnhem, they immediately encountered far stiffer resistance than anticipated. German tanks, artillery, and infantry were already in position. Communications were disrupted by terrain and enemy action, making coordination with other units nearly impossible. Troops fought heroically, capturing small pockets of territory and holding key positions, but the overall plan began to unravel. By the second day, the British 1st Airborne Division was surrounded, cut off, and running out of supplies. Attempts to reinforce them along the narrow Hell's Highway met stiff German resistance, slowing the advance to a crawl. The failure to capture Arnhem intact led to one of the most famous phrases in military history: "A bridge too far." The British 1st Airborne, despite extraordinary bravery, could not hold the bridge, and the operation failed to achieve its ultimate goal. Tens of thousands of soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured. Civilians in the Netherlands suffered as the fighting tore through towns and countryside. The narrowness of the corridor and the underestimation of German forces had turned Montgomery's bold gamble into a costly ordeal. Yet the story of Operation Market Garden is not one of total disaster. Many of its participants displayed extraordinary heroism. Airborne troops fought under impossible conditions, improvising in the face of overwhelming odds. Local Dutch resistance members risked everything to shelter paratroopers and guide them to objectives. The operation demonstrated both the limits and potential of airborne warfare, leaving lessons that would inform military strategy for decades to come. In retrospect, Operation Market Garden almost changed the course of the war in ways historians still debate. Had Arnhem fallen and XXX Corps reached the Rhine, the Allies might have entered northern Germany before winter, potentially shortening the war by months. Yet the combination of intelligence failures, overconfidence, and unforeseen German resistance turned the impossible gamble into a cautionary tale. It remains a symbol of audacity, courage, and the fine line between victory and catastrophe. Today, the legacy of Market Garden lives on in the Netherlands. War cemeteries, memorials, and museums preserve the memory of the men who fought and died in the fields and towns of Eindhoven, Nijmegen, and Arnhem. The operation stands as a testament not only to military planning and strategy, but also to the human cost of ambition. It is a story of bravery, of risk, of hope and heartbreak, a story that captures the very essence of war's unpredictability. Operation Market Garden reminds us that war is never simply about numbers or equipment. It is about timing, intelligence, courage, and the willingness to take risks when the stakes are highest. It is about how a single misjudgment can turn bold triumph into tragedy, and how even failure can be a measure of human heroism. And above all, it teaches us that history is shaped not only by those who win, but by those who dare to gamble everything on a single, impossible plan. The men who jumped from planes over the Dutch countryside, who fought through flooded fields and burning villages, who held bridges against overwhelming odds, they were the heart of Operation Market Garden. Their stories are a reminder that in war, courage is as decisive as strategy, and that even when plans fail, the human spirit can endure. It was an operation that almost changed the world, a daring Allied gamble that, while failing to achieve its ultimate goal, showcased both the brilliance and the peril of ambition in wartime. And for those who study it today, Market Garden remains one of the most fascinating, tragic, and heroic chapters of the Second World War.